The rumor mill has been pretty active lately with some of the upcoming releases with the newest White Dwarf. The biggest two things, of course, are that we will be seeing a Primaris Dark Elves or Dark Angels launch come September 20th. In addition to that, we will also be seeing maybe perhaps the codex for Dark Angels as well. And this kind of plays in line with what we just saw from Warhammer Community today that released rules for Space Wolves, Dark Angels, and Blood Angels, pretty much covering all the Shadowspear Vanguard set. But will this also include some expansion to the Dark Angels Primaris line? Will we get some new additions to their lore, to their rules, to their fluff, everything? And of course, the big kind of elephant in the room covers, will we see the rise of Lionel Johnson again? And there's a lot of things right now that can really hint towards that, or really kind of move in that direction. So today we're going to kind of talk about some of those speculative things. And again, this is just theorizing, speculation. This is not based on anything outside of me taking a look at little snippets from the 8th edition, putting together some stuff from my Cypher knowledge, not to be confused with a Cypher. I'm talking about the character Cypher. So let's dive in here. Let's take a look at what we've got. So what we know right now in the current campaign of 8th edition Warhammer 40,000 is that we have Vigilus Defiant, then moving on to Vigilus Ablaze. And with Vigilus Ablaze, we got a nice rehash to a lot of those Chaos rules that we sorely needed. Abaddon got a brand new model. We got a ton of models for all the other warbands and legions of Chaos, but we also got a lot of a lot of rules for the Fallen. And what does that mean? That has a lot of connotation. We know that Vigilus is on the Imperium Nihilus side of the Imperium, with Imperium Sanctus being on the opposite end. And we do know, if we take a look at this 8th edition blurb from the actual timeline portion of the Dark Angels Codex, we see the Darkest Angels, rumors, psychic signatures, and the torture-wrought confessions of captured prisoners tell us of a mustering within the darkest recesses of the warp-shrouded Nihilist sector. They speak of a gathering of many of the Fallen, a corrupted legion reassembling in numbers enough to bring the entire galaxy to heel. Azrael alone suspects the truth of who is leading them. And what does he mean? Well, he's talking about possibly Luther. We know that Luther is no longer imprisoned within the rock. Luther himself speaks out directly about the possible origins or the connotations or at least the heavy narrative of Cypher. So maybe we're going to see Cypher play a very heavy hand in the story to come with the Dark Angels. We know that Cypher played a very heavy hand again in the Gathering Storm narrative to help free Guilliman from the Blackstone Fortress with the help of the other Fallen and the Harbingers. And Guilliman said, you can say hi to Empipu, to Emperor Mac Daddy. But as soon as he saw the lion's sword on his back, he said, no, put this guy in prison. So there's a lot of questions being asked here, right? Why does Guilliman fear Cypher walking to the Emperor's table or throne with the lion sword? I mean, he does have a master-crafted bullet pistol and plasma pistol. I think a sword, which requires you to be up close and personal, is the least of his worries. So the lion sword in specific triggered something in Guilliman's mind where he said, nope, I have to separate this. And we know that Guilliman and the Lion have a very close connection from Imperium Secundus, which was formed during the Horus Heresy as a result of Guilliman thinking that Terra was lost. And we do know there's a very heavy narrative between Guilliman and the Lion as the War Master of that time. And we're seeing that almost kind of pop up here. So what if the Lion were to come back and he were to be the second Primarch returned to the Loyalist faction? We would kind of see what we saw with Imperium Secundus. Really, Sanguinius was the emperor of Imperium Secundus, if you want to think of it that way. And the Lion was the War Master, and really you kind of look at, what's his name? Guilliman as the regent of Imperium Secundus. And we see the same thing happening right now. We see the Lord Commander Regent, whatever we want to call him in the current 8th edition Dark Millennium, 42nd Millennium that we're in right now, for Guilliman. And really, don't we need a War Master of this era as far as someone helping to spearhead and lead Imperium Nihilus? Sure, we have the Regent of Nihilus in Commander Dante, which we'll cover in our own video about the Blood Angels after this one. But it kind of stands to, or I guess you could say, it really makes a lot of sense for Lionel Johnson to rise up. And in my mind, and I've voiced this before in some other videos about my speculations on this, but to rise up and take the Rock, which is a moving construct, it is an actual ship, through the Noctwan Gauntlet and into Imperium Nihilus to bring the fight directly to Luther, if that is who in fact is leading the Fallen, and to, you know, purge the Fallen from Imperium Nihilus, from the Imperium as a whole. The Fallen, as it were, are tossed throughout all over time. So there's going to have to be a constant vigilance against them. And, you know, the real big, I guess you could say, stipulation that a lot of people have is, well, the Lion's not awake yet. That is not true. With the Psychic Awakening, a lot of people think that's going to be the thing that awakens the Lion. That is not necessarily the case. If we look at the very end of the 8th edition Dark Angels Codex, the absolute, I think it's like the last page or second to last page, here's this very interesting lore blurb, because it has changed from every edition up until now. The previous editions were always, he's sleeping deep within the rock, and the Watchers in the Dark are looking over him, and he's looking to rise when the Dark Angels need him the most. That typical Arthurian motif that is repeated across almost every single chapter. You know, Lehman Russ has the wolf times, Corvus Corax has the same thing going, you know, that kind of shtick. So here's this lore blurb. One more truth remains concealed, however. Buried deep inside the last bedrock of Old Caliban is the greatest of all the Dark Angel's secrets. Hidden in the innermost chamber that is unreachable by all save the cryptic Watchers in the Dark, Lionel Johnson slumbers. His wounds long healed, he awaits a time when he is most needed, when the clarion call of battle summons him to once more lead his sons to defend the Imperium of mankind. His wounds long healed. He is awake. He's down there. He's like playing like Candy Crush with the Watchers in the Dark, going like, yo, when's my time, guys? He is definitely aware of the situation, or not even aware of maybe what's going on in the galaxy as a whole, but I think he's at least conscious, and he is at least trying to get some information, I would assume. Or he's being fed information and he's kind of thinking, okay, not my time quite yet. We kind of still have things under control. So my theory is, with this next Dark Angels Codex, unless they want to wait all the way until a 9th edition and then take a bigger push towards the Primarchs, we're going to see a rise, or at least a stirring of the fluff with Lionel Johnson. I mean, he is already awake. He's already there. There's plenty of motive for him to go into Imperium Nihilus and pursue Luther, and perhaps that's what we're going to get, is a Luther as well on the other end of the spectrum. So I'm very curious to see how this plays out, and how Cypher plays into this as well. Cypher has kind of come and interwoven his way throughout the lore of the Dark Angels. He's been captured many times by the Dark Angels and imprisoned within the Rock in the past 10,000 years. And the Supreme Masters of the Dark Angels have let him go. So he's definitely has a pretty pivotal role to play still. He has Lionel Johnson's sword. He has this kind of knack for appearing to either aid or hinder the Dark Angels in some way, shape, or form. There's that kind of age-old adage that has been propped up since the Horus Heresy books have really come into fashion, is Cypher Zahariel. And there is an additional kind of notion that Cypher himself is kind of timeless. He passes in and out of time through all these past 10,000 years, trying to set up everything in the right kind of configuration to maybe make for the Dark Angels to be ultimately redeemed, to allow for Lionel Johnson to come back. Maybe all these things they're making their way towards one grander truth, and I'm very curious to see what that is. Cypher is one of the only characters, next to like the Bretonnian Green Knight, that Games Workshop has kept such a close watch on it, and kept so close to their chest, and kind of kept him very enigmatic but very integral to the lore of, you know, that specific character's, I guess, parent faction. And I think that what we might see with Chapter Master Valrock made a really good point about this. He was talking about how will Lionel Johnson really react well to the Primaris and the current events of things? Like how will he react to the Imperial Creed, the Imperial Truth, and how it is supplanted the secular truth, which he believes so heavily in? And will this kind of ultimately lead to him butting heads with the the Sisters of Battle. I think that was a really great point that he brought up. And maybe we're going to see something where Lionel Johnson isn't a loyalist Primarch. Maybe he stands in between a loyalist faction and like a true to the Emperor type faction, where yeah, sure, he's for the Imperium, but he's for the insecular truth of the Imperium. And maybe we start to get some sort of branch off from there. That's me just spitballing. I don't think Games Workshop would ever do that because of like the huge split that it would cause in all the Imperium factions from a tabletop standpoint and being able to field those armies. But it's something to kind of mull over, right? Lionel Johnson has always prized himself in his ability to stand apart from the Imperium while at the same time being a massive and integral portion of it. So a lot of rumors and a lot of things should shake out as in the next month here as we hopefully get more information from the next drop of these Space Marine codexes. We know that we're getting White Scars coming up. We know we're getting Ultramarines, but Imperial Fists are due for their own. We're going to be seeing Space Wolves, Blood Angels again, Dark Angels, and this should hopefully push the lore forward for all of them. In my next video, I'll be covering Commander Dante and where I think he is kind of in his current state in the lore. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. If you have any ideas or any of your own speculation as to where or how Lionel Johnson's going to play into the future, love to hear them below. But as always, have a good one and take care.